For years, for many years, there are states with 1.5 million in active registrations. Or in one case, in the recent past, there was a state with 30,000 deceased voters on the rolls, and 300,000 people probably have moved elsewhere. When Judicial Watch files a lawsuit to clean up the voter rolls, we choose counties and we choose states where we think they're not taking care of their own people candidates who are no longer eligible to vote. We tell them, we think this is the case, we want information from you, we want to understand how you do your borderless movements, and we'd like an explanation as to why these numbers seem low. And we ask for documents. Judicial Watch has commenced clean voter lawsuits against Indiana, Ohio, the state of California, Los Angeles County, which is bigger than most states with a population of about 10 million people, the state of Kentucky, the state of Maryland, and Montgomery County, Maryland. It does all start with simple, unbiased information and inquiries based on that information. And from that point, it can become very obvious who is
원 기자님, 그 펜스
we sue those people, and our record is that we win.
그래요? 안녕하세요, 신의 한수 시청자 여러분, 이용남입니다. 오늘 그 CPEC 둘째 날인데요. CPEC 행사 중에서 가장 기대되는 행사 중에 하나입니다. 잠시 후에 마크 펜스 부통령의 스피치가 있을 예정인데요. 트럼프 대통령에 앞서 마크 펜스 부통령이 나오셔서 이번 그 대선에 대해서 미국인들에게 메시지를 던질 예정입니다. 여러분들 기대.
America is making great strides towards freedom and liberty, but she also confronts determined foes and faces enormous challenges. Challenges that strike directly at the core principles that all of us here hold so dear. Free enterprise, limited government, individual freedom, traditional values, and national security. Across America and globally,
많이 설명하지 않아도 여러분 대통령 나오면 기대해주세요. 어떤 발언할지
안녕하세요, 신의 한수 시청자 여러분. 잠시 후에는 펜스 부통령의 스피치가 있을 예정입니다. 여러분들 많은 기대 부탁드리겠습니다.
we're not just a bulwark against the left, we're a battleship for liberty. We are determined to guide America to renewed greatness and to take the fight to the present. That's why I'm so proud to serve as the Heritage Foundation's president, and why I'm so honored to join with you in the fight for the greatest nation on earth.
You too, stay close to me, all right?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from the Heritage Foundation, Kay James.
Now you all know that right after I'm done, the Vice President is here, right? So my fellow CPACers, have a seat and get ready. So for 40 years, the Heritage Foundation has produced a document called the Mandate for Leadership. It's a guideline for policy. Now, anyone who knows me knows how much I love former President Reagan. I'm leaving. When we published our Mandate for Leadership, President Reagan gave it to every member of his cabinet and said, if you do this, we will have a successful presidency. And President Reagan, as good as he was, accomplished about 49% of the Heritage Foundation mandate for leadership. Now, here comes Mr. Make America Great Again, Donald J. Trump. And he has, in his first term, embraced over 64%. With the president on almost everything. But there's one thing he said that I take issue with. The president said, "You're gonna get tired of winning." In fact, Mr. President, I ain't no ways tired. On that. And I thought I should turn on old Uncle Joe and Hillary to see how I could affect that black dialect. All right. But I'm not tired. I ain't no ways tired of winning. And I hope you aren't either. We come to CPAC every year because we want to hear the fantastic speakers. We want to do some networking. We want to catch up with some old friends. I see some folks over here I haven't seen in a while. But what's the real reason you're here? You got it. We're here because the stakes are high. And ladies and gentlemen, we face a battle today between those who want to preserve this nation and those who want to bring her down from within. The question I have for you is, are you ready for the battle? Yes. Are you ready for the fight? I came to CPAC because I wanted to encourage you. I know there are times when we feel like we're outmanned, figuratively speaking, outdone, only figuratively. With so many people in the news media, in our education system, and the entertainment industry, who are all working against us. But let me tell you, I know what many of them don't, that we have a stronger will to win because of what's at stake. They don't get it, you do. We're willing to work for a cause that is greater than any one of us. We're at a pivotal time in history. We're seeing our founding principles not just abandoned, but trashed. People are being told that free markets don't work, that free speech is too dangerous, and that we need to give up even more of our liberty and our income for an even bigger and more intrusive government. Our students in our public schools are lied to repeatedly and told that America is an imperialistic nation. They're told we're the cause of the world's problems, like poverty and pollution and global warming. It's all our fault. In fact, the far left despises so much about America that they're working to even rewrite American history. They're trying to erase our American identity, and they're trashing the fact that America is exceptional among the nations. Yes, I said it. And while you and I work to call Americans to unite around the torch of liberty, they work to create subgroups and divisions among us with their identity politics. The policies of the statists have wrought destruction. Rather than bringing prosperity, they bring decline. Rather than bringing unity, they sow divisiveness. Rather than protecting freedom, they subordinate it to an even more powerful, intrusive, and bigger government. It's not the America most people, even most moderates and liberals, want to live in. So, what are we going to do about this? How are we? So I have some suggestions.
I'm going to put one here.
We've often heard the story when he was leaving Constitutional Hall that Benjamin Franklin was asked the question whether America would end up as a republic
This is too much space.
or a monarchy. And he replied, a republic. If you
It doesn't matter. This is too much. I can't let you have the space. We need to. We gotta fill it. I have to have the space. We have to fill it. This is my space. Okay. We understand. I'm CPAC.
I want you to leave with these words ringing in your ears. The exact same character, determination, and sacrifice that were required to found this republic are now desperately needed.
Getty out. Thanks.
We have work. Our founders pledged their lives, their fortunes, their sacred honor for the cause of freedom. And ladies and gentlemen, every single CPACer here has to do the same.
Are you calling that
Fortunately, I don't think we have to die for the cause, but we do have to dedicate our time and our treasures to defending this nation against those who would destroy her. Now let me tell you what that means. That means calling and writing your elected officials about proposed legislation.
1, 2, 3, 4.
It means visiting their offices and
We're all
making
separate.
your
1, 2, 3, 4 is
voices
too many.
heard
We're
at town hall meetings.
We're different. Okay.
It means you don't get to
It's a
leave
lot.
here on a sugar high, go home and do nothing. It means you have to volunteer for candidates. It means you have to find candidates who will work for limited government, free market principles, and traditional American values and go to work for them. It means being willing to speak up and educate others about the issues that are so important. And they may only hear it from you because they won't get these messages through traditional sources. It means teaching our children about our history. Teaching them that American exceptionalism is real. Teaching them that it's okay to feel pride in their country. say this to an audience like this, but I've seen the data and it's important to say. It means multiplying our efforts to go out and find your neighbors, your friends, your church members, and they are many who have not registered to vote. Get them registered and get them to the polls. At the Heritage Foundation, we, like you, love this country. We need red, white, and blue. And we want to help you and your organization. If we can be helpful in any way, you can find us at heritage.org. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you can tell I love this. Very special country, and we are a truly blessed people.
Amen.
But right now, America needs our help to keep her special. One of my all-time favorite heroes is Harriet Tubman. And if you don't know her life story, look it up. Harriet risked her life to help slaves escape the South. And she told them to go true north for their freedom. But she also told them, if you turn around and go back, I might have to shoot you because you will put all of us at risk. That was one sassy woman. In other words, my friends, we need to stick together and stay the course. And I'm asking you, my fellow conservatives, don't turn around. We need you. We need you to stay in the fight. We need you to leave CPAC energized. Take all the knowledge and wisdom that you can get. Take all the skills that you can get through the workshops. This is not the mountaintop experience. Leave this place. Go home and go to work. This great country is working. Thank you so much for your time.
Our next presentation is a video of the Pool of Shiloh.
Good morning, CPAC. We want to welcome you from sunny, but not warm, Jerusalem. We are sitting here in ancient Jerusalem, which we are going to explain to you very shortly. I am Artie Lightstone. I am Ambassador David Friedman, Senior Advisor at our embassy in Jerusalem, Israel. And it's my honor to moderate this morning's conversation in between two real heroes of the U.S.-Israel relationship, of our Judeo-Christian heritage. And on my left, Ambassador David Friedman, who I don't believe requires any introduction to your crowd or any other crowd, not ours. We normally go through his bio, but it updates so frequently that all you can talk about is the most recent accomplishments, whether it's the recognition of Jerusalem, the moving of the embassy, the Pompeo Doctrine, etc., etc. Again, Ambassador Friedman honors us with his presence, and I know this is his first time.
Showing the double nice, you know, like the double nice.
I don't have notes in front of me, it's difficult to keep track of everything you've done recently. But I know he's excited to be here with you at CPAC, both digitally and shortly in person as well. And Zev, if you haven't met Zev, that's just because you haven't been around CPAC long enough. Zev is a long-standing, significant member of policy coming from Jerusalem and bringing it to the United States of America that we are so excited to spend today with you. So you might ask, on a cold, almost rainy day here in Jerusalem, why are we sitting outside and why are we sitting here? There's so much interesting things that we can be at and so many cool places we can see. Why are we sitting right here at this point in time? So without any further introduction, Zach, tell us where we are and why it matters.
So right now we're sitting in the city of David. Up until 150 years ago, when people thought, where is the original biblical city of Jerusalem, everyone imagined it was the old city of Jerusalem, inside the walls of the old city. Until 1867, when Queen Victoria of England wants to discover the treasures of the Bible, like the Ark of the Covenant. She sends a man by the name of Captain Charles Warren to the Holy Land to find those treasures. And if you're going to search for the treasures of the Bible anywhere in the Holy Land, you'll come to Jerusalem. And you'll go to the Temple Mount, the biblical Mount Moriah. And so that's what Charles Warren does. And in 1867 he comes, except in that year, the Ottomans, the Muslims, are ruling this area, and they say, Charles, we're sure you are a great guy, but you are not going to dig up the Temple Mount. Right? The Temple Mount being the site where the first temple built by Solomon, King David's son, stood, the second temple built a few decades afterwards, which was destroyed by the Romans in the year 70. Charles Warren can't dig there. But he understands he can't go back to the Queen empty-handed. And so he says, if I can't dig on the Temple Mount, dig on the site of the biblical Mount Moriah, where the binding of Isaac, as recounted in the book of Genesis, took place, then I will do the next best thing, which is to dig near the Temple Mount. He comes down the slopes of Mount Moriah, and he finds a spring, a spring flowing for thousands of years, known as the Gihon Spring. And he sees the spring is flowing through an ancient man-made tunnel. He begins to walk through this tunnel, not realizing it is a tunnel dating back some 2,700 years, engineered by the biblical King Hezekiah. And he ends up coming up with a theory. And the theory is that the original biblical city of Jerusalem, the city of David, the city of Solomon, the prophets, Isaiah and Jeremiah, the biblical city of David, is not located inside the walls of the old city, but in fact located outside. At that time, the whole world thinks he's crazy, except over the next 150 years, where we're sitting right now in the city of David becomes one of the most archaeologically excavated sites in the world, the most excavated site in this country, and the antiquities that have been discovered over those last 150 years, and certainly over the last few years here, have shown that the connection of Jews and Christians to Jerusalem, to our shared biblical heritage here, is not simply a matter of faith, but a matter of fact.
And you make history come alive, you make it feel so real and so present, and I know that the ambassador has a chance to be here more than just once. Ambassador, why do you come to the city of David, and what's unique about this administration making the city of David, you know, a place that you frequent?
Well, as a Jew and as an American, this is the one place where both of my heritages really began. This is the place where Judaism began, where Abraham showed his commitment to God, where King David united the people of Israel under a single kingdom in Jerusalem, where the temples stood for 1,000 years. And as an American, it's also the place where our values began as well, where our Judeo-Christian values began. If you look at the foundational documents of our republic, the Declaration of Independence, the founding fathers observed that all people were endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights: life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and others. Now, how did our creators know what God had endowed as being unalienable? They didn't say, you know, it's a good idea for people to have life, or it's a great idea for people to be free. They said that these rights are unalienable and they come from God. Well, where did the word of God come from? Isaiah tells us, out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. Jerusalem is the source of our Judeo-Christian values that we as Americans cherish. And this is the site where, as an observant Jew, as a practicing Jew, I can look back and see an ancient people still alive today, observing the same religion, the same language, in the same place that we did 3,000 years ago. And to me, that's very powerful. So it's a pretty good reason to keep coming back, and this is a very, very important place.
I think that's an excellent reason to describe why you come here. I want to dig a little bit deeper, pun not intended here, on that particular example. You know, CPAC, one of the best parts about this organization is that the average age is significantly younger than almost any other gathering that shows up in Washington, D.C. And the power, the enthusiasm, the excitement in the room is contagious, and you can really feel it. You spoke about heritage, you spoke about the founding documents and doctrines of the country. Why is that relevant to the kids here in the audience, to the young men and the young women? Why does that matter?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, we need to know where we came from. We need to understand the values that animate and give life to our nation, whether it's Americans, Israelis, Jews, Christians. These values have stood the test of time. They are immutable. They're not subject to negotiation. And our republic, the future of our republic, is dependent upon our ability to stay true to these values that really came from our Creator. So it's incredibly important to the future. Also, as we struggle with all the challenges that Israel faces, all the political and geopolitical problems, you know, there's a difference between going to a museum and seeing an ancient shard of glass, or an old coin, or a piece of parchment. When you come to the city of David, and you can immerse yourself in the history of the Jewish people. You can go back to the beginnings of Judaism. You can go back to the beginnings of Christianity. You can walk along this road from the Pool of Siloam up until the Temple Mount, and take the same steps that Jesus took when he visited the temple, as he was wont to do and as he enjoyed doing, or the Jewish nation as they came on various pilgrimages throughout the year. So this immersive experience is like no other, and it also is the answer to all the falsehoods that Jews and Christians face every day about the inauthenticity of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And we all know that's not true, but here's a way to actually see it for yourself. The United Nations is shameless, and their willingness to deny the connection of the Jewish people and of the Christian faith to Jerusalem. But you come here and you can't deny it anymore. You know, I carry with me some coins.
Wait, I want to say that as the...
You don't see my coins?
I want to see all of your coins. I just want to see some money right now. Like to have one of the coins. Now, you mentioned two things, Mr. Ambassador. I can just jump in for 1 second. Number one is that this is not about history. This is about today, and more importantly, about the future. So all of you watching this now live, this is not just a historical site. It's also a site that, as the ambassador points out so eloquently, is about our today and is about our future. And you also mentioned an immersive experience. I can't help but turn to you and say, from an immersive experience perspective, tell us exactly where we are. It seems like every 3, 4, 5 feet that you move over here, there's another piece of history, but there's something unique about us beginning this conversation right here as we begin our journey. Explain where we are, Seth.
So 2004, we're about 20 feet underground. There is a sewage pipe not far from where we're sitting. And in 2004, that sewage pipe bursts. So now the Jerusalem municipality has to come with construction crews to repair the sewage pipe. But Jerusalem is not just another municipality, and the city of David is not just another part of Jerusalem. And so when the sewage pipe bursts here, you don't only send in construction crews, you also send in archaeologists. So the construction crews are doing their work, the bulldozers, dump trucks doing their thing. And the archaeologists, they begin to hear scraping, scratching. It doesn't sound right. They clear everyone out. And it turns out that in repairing the sewage pipe, they had inadvertently uncovered the steps that the audience here is sitting on right now. 2,000-year-old steps, going back to the time of Herod, going back to the time of Jesus. And they said there's only one other place in Jerusalem with steps just like these, and these are the steps leading up to the southern ascent of the Temple Mount by the Holy Gates, the southern steps with deep significance to Christians and to Jews. And they said there must be a connection between these two sets of stairs, separated by nearly half a mile. And they realized that the steps where we are right now lead down into what is known biblically as the ancient Pool of Siloam. Now the Pool of Siloam has deep significance to Christians and to Jews. To Christians, it's the site in the Christian scriptures mentioned in the book of John of the healing of the blind man. In the Bible, this is the place the Bible tells us there are 3 times during the year: Passover, Pentecost, Tabernacles, Passover, Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot, when all of Israel has to go up to the temple. Now, before you can go up to the temple, you have to purify yourself, you have to cleanse yourself. The historian Josephus says that 2,000 years ago on Passover, for instance, nearly 3 million people would have gone up on pilgrimage. So the question the archaeologists had was, how did everyone get from the pool up to the temple on the Temple Mount? And if this is the pool, where we're sitting right now, the pool of Siloam, which only a small part of it has been excavated today, so then the question was, what does this then lead to?
It's a great question. I think we're going to actually go see that ourselves in just a moment. Before we go do that, so let me ask you differently from a policy perspective. What does Jerusalem mean to you? What does it mean to the United States of America?
The spirit of Jerusalem is the spirit that founded our nation. When John Winthrop was entering Massachusetts Bay, he asked for the favor of the God of Israel and felt that he was coming to what he considered to be the New Jerusalem. John Adams, second President of the United States, talked about how important it would be for there to be a new nation formed of the ancient Jewish people in Judea. In 1844, the United States opened up a consulate in Jerusalem. 1844, it's 104 years before the independence of the State of Israel. The United States was already opening up a consulate. The Consul General, a guy by the name of Warder Crescent, came to the Jaffa Gate, he planted an American flag, and he said, "We hereby extend the protection of the United States over the Jews of Jerusalem." Mark Twain, Ulysses Grant, Abraham Lincoln, in Ford's Theater right before he died, the Civil War was over. His wife said to him, "Now that the war is over, what would you like to do?" He said, "I'd really like to travel and visit Jerusalem." This is who we are as Americans. That's why in 1995, by majorities of 90% majorities in the House and the Senate, we passed the Jerusalem Embassy Act, in which Congress recognized and President Clinton allowed it to become law, the recognition of Jerusalem as the undivided capital of the State of Israel. This is where I'm repeating myself, I know, but this is where our heritage came from. You look at websites now like Ancestry.com, everybody wants to know where they came from. It's essential to our future to know where we came from. It's essential to know what our parents and our forefathers and their ancestors, what motivated them to forge this great nation in America, and the same token, to create the State of Israel. And without Jerusalem, we are untethered to the values and the principles that informed our fathers, our founding fathers, and that created our great nation. I still think the greatest experiment in human government, self-government in human history. And it all came from the spirit and the teachings of Jerusalem, the prophets, the biblical writings, the teachings. This is who we are. And God forbid we should ever lose that, because if we lose that, I think as a nation we become untethered to the principles that have guided us successfully for the last 250 years.
So one of the fascinating things about Jerusalem is that it's ancient and it's old and it's new and it's modern. And when somebody writes a book on Jerusalem, if you were to begin at the beginning, I presume that you would start here. If you were to write the last chapter or so, even perhaps the last couple of pages with a very large heading under that chapter, Ambassador, you played a significant role in that. Would you mind just walking us through, if you will, from January 20th, 2017 until today, and how Jerusalem has changed in the eyes of the United States of America?
Well, it's interesting. Every candidate for president in modern times has promised to move the embassy to Jerusalem. We've had a law in the books since 1995, as I said, that required that. Even though the law provided a 6-month opportunity for the president to move the embassy, there was never a statutory opportunity to waive the recognition of Jerusalem. And somehow, even without any ability not to do it, presidents of both parties neglected this statutory obligation. President Trump came along, and I think his decision to recognize Jerusalem, to move the embassy, accomplished 2 things. The first thing is that it fulfilled a promise to the American people that was embodied in our laws for a quarter of a century. Equally important, I think what the president said is he's going to stand on the side of truth, stand on the side of history, and he's not going to allow petty politics to interfere with with something that is so fundamentally true and right and important and recognized by the people of the United States to their representatives by overwhelming majorities. And it more than anything else, I think, it distinguished our president from his predecessors by showing that he wasn't someone who took promises lightly. He wasn't a career politician, and he would stand for things that were right. And that has resonated, I think, throughout the world. Our foreign policy throughout the world has been advantaged significantly because of the principled stand that the president took with regard to Jerusalem.
Ambassador, you're not going to brag about that, but I know that the president was advised and to stand on the side of truth, and I'll brag on your behalf. We all know that you played a completely and totally instrumental role in helping that happen. And for all of us here, we appreciate that. For all of us out there, I know that they appreciate that as well. Some of us interested in that when we turn over to you, the concept of truth and history, in fact, started here, and you walk over to Arnona over there, the same concept of history and facts and truth. Stand strong and stand true. United and combined in Jerusalem and, again, the United States of America. Before we go on the walk, tell us what you want to tell us.
You know, we're in the city of David, biblical Jerusalem. It doesn't get older than where we are right now. Jerusalem has been a pilgrimage site for millennia for people of all faiths and backgrounds from all over the world. There's no shortage of ancient sites and structures in Jerusalem that people have been making pilgrimage to for thousands of years. It's rare in modern times to find a structure that becomes a pilgrimage site that is imbued with sanctity almost. The United States Embassy in Jerusalem has become one of those sites. There's not a group that I host here in the city of David that at some point isn't saying to me, we either just came from or we're going to the embassy. That a trip to Israel today, a trip to Jerusalem today, you can go to the Western Wall, you can come to the city of David, the Mount of Olives, the trip to the Holy Sepulchre, the Garden of Gethsemane. In that same conversation today has become the United States Embassy in Jerusalem. It's on that level almost of significance and sanctity to millions, if not billions of people around the world.
A new shrine in Jerusalem. I can tell you that one of the things that gives me tremendous satisfaction, sometimes I'll be done with work and get into the car, and as I'm going out the front, I see the tour buses pulled up right to the plaque at the front, and 75 people get out of the bus and they're taking their turns online taking pictures. And so this happened a couple months ago. I was with Ari, and I got out of the car and I walked towards the front, and right away 5 or 6 people came over to me and said, there's a line, And I said, of course I'll take the turn, but I just thought you might want to say, to me. And they said, well, why? And I said, well, if you look at this plaque, you see the first name is Donald Trump, but that's not me, and then the next one is Vice President Pence, that's not me. But the third guy, that's actually me. And the reaction that we get, and it never fails, is such an overwhelming sense of gratitude not to me, not to the president, but gratitude to God that people were able to live to see the day that the United States Embassy found a home in Jerusalem. And it's incredible. It never gets old. It's incredible.
And our Jerusalem traffic now oftentimes have a lot of time anticipating showing up to the office, and that's met with great enthusiasm. We are the only tour site that does not sell keychains outside. And if we had, we'd be able to pay for the embassy many times over. I think that we're going to go from here to the pool of Siloam. We're going to go on a journey. We're going to go on a journey together. We invite you all to join us.
We're going to talk about the corn.
Get to talk about it. Next time. That's what we're planning.
Okay, just wanted to
hold it for you.